I never imagined I'd hear those words from someone I had loved for more than 10 years. I regret marrying you, Lauren said, her voice cold and precise, like a judgment long delayed finally being delivered. I stood frozen, the room thick with the weight of years of unspoken grievances. Quiet disappointments and lingering resentments had accumulated silently, unnoticed, until the moment everything cracked. Marriage, I realized, can quietly weaken over time, and one day the structure just gives way. 4 years, I had poured myself into our life together: love, support, patience, loyalty. I had been the calm in the storms, the steady anchor when pressures mounted. But in her eyes that morning, it was as if all of that effort vanished. It wasn't anger I saw, but a cold verdict of dissatisfaction, a clear statement that somewhere along the way, she had decided our bond wasn't enough. I didn't respond immediately. Anger or pleading would have only fed her attempt to diminish me. Instead, I listened, letting the weight of her words sink in. She repeated herself, as if saying it twice might make it true. But it didn't hurt the way it once could. In that moment, I felt clarity, not regret. I recognized who she was, and by doing so, I realized she had unknowingly handed me the chance to reclaim my life. I decided then that things would shift. She would experience the reality of my independence, not through cruelty but through the quiet assertion of my presence in my own life. It wasn't revenge. It was a matter of truth. I would no longer revolve around someone who had already decided my presence was a burden. I would step back, create distance, and allow her to feel the emptiness of taking for granted someone who had given everything. The next morning, I began small, deliberate changes. I stopped bending my schedule to hers. I stopped rearranging my life to accommodate her whims. My actions were subtle but intentional. The absence of my usual availability became the first silent reminder of what she had ignored for years. I wasn't being cruel. I was being fully myself. No longer a shadow living to fill her space, I began reconnecting with friends I had neglected, revisiting old hobbies, and enjoying moments of life that had been postponed for the sake of fragile harmony. Lauren noticed immediately. Over breakfast, her eyes searched mine, a flicker of confusion and unease betraying her casual words. "You're different," she said, trying to sound nonchalant, but her tone betrayed panic. I smiled faintly, saying nothing, letting the silence speak for me. Words no longer carried power. Action had become my language. The more I prioritized myself, the more my absence became apparent in her world. Each independent choice was a quiet testament that I was no longer tethered to her perception of me. The effect was instant. Lauren grew tense, defensive, impatient. She tried to draw me into conversation, criticized me, even attempted guilt, but I remained calm, composed, unshaken. My presence alone was louder than any argument she could make. By the second week, her frustration was tangible. She questioned me, tried to provoke reactions, seeking any trace of the old dependence. But the harder she pushed, the firmer I became. At last, she understood that her disdain and her words could not manipulate me. The reality of solitude, the emptiness she had taken for granted, was unavoidable, and it would teach her the weight of her choices. By the third week, the shift was complete. Lauren's manipulations grew increasingly desperate, subtle jabs, sarcasm, feigned sadness, but each attempt met the same unyielding calm. I had become the observer of my own life rather than a participant in her drama. One evening, she approached me, her voice trembling. "Are you even going to talk to me anymore?" she asked, searching for a crack, a hint of vulnerability. I met her gaze steadily. "I am talking," I said, "but as myself, not the person you've tried to shape me into." That statement left her silent, the weight of the truth overwhelming. Days passed, and the emptiness she felt became more pronounced. She had expected my constant availability, my automatic acquiescence, the easy access to attention she had grown accustomed to. But I had reclaimed my time, my energy, my space. I no longer waited up for her late nights, adjusted my plans to suit her, or tolerated her subtle digs masked as jokes. The loss of control reflected the reality she had ignored. Our life had been a partnership, and I was no longer willing to play a secondary role. Finally, one quiet evening, she admitted, almost in a whisper, "I don't know how to reach you anymore." There was no triumph in her words, only acknowledgement. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded, recognizing the truth. Sometimes lessons are not taught through confrontation, but through absence. By reclaiming myself and letting her feel the void she created, I had regained my freedom. Her statement, "I regret marrying you," met the reality she could not manipulate, solitude. And for me, it was liberation, a reminder that self-respect and independence outweigh any attempt at humiliation or remorse.